Well, I sort of started to say how we met, and that was kind of through the mill, wasn't it, and through the Jeremy Delapy's piece. And I hadn't met you before, Vicky, had I? They were Salford around the mill. And then actually really getting quite excited about a Salford Makers project, and then suddenly everything just came together really quickly last minute. We were like, what? Okay, what? and then we sort of started in an observational role around the MIF, but then we just got really excited. And then we had so many ideas, and everything was just in flow, and we were like, yeah, we could do this and we do this, because I think for me, I mean, I know absolutely zip about coding, so it was like, you can do what? Ooh. And then Sally as well, I was like, wow, that's like another element. So the way it all sort of came together was just really new and really refreshing, and I was a bit sort of sick of just doing fashion stuff, so it was really nice to get your teeth into something a bit more.
I think it was that kind of new, that way. I guess the exciting point of what we do, like I see, innovation is that collaboration point. Individually what we do, it is interesting, but I think the really exciting part is how we combine that to work together, and I think that was the exciting bit, really. I think
there was a lot of talk about around the mill anyway, about sort of the future of textiles, and Bill, who owns the mill, it has a textiles background as well that he'd sort of put to rest, but then he'd been working on the Claw project, which had sort of sparked his ideas about democratizing fashion, and that kind of, we had quite a similar aspect about that. It was kind of like a love-hate thing with fashion, as in loving the creativity but not liking the machine behind it, and that worked with you with textiles.
I think so, yeah. I mean, I've been interested in kind of hack space culture and the maker movement, and the idea of kind of creating one-off products or one-off things that you've really been involved in personally. So the idea of sort of working with the code and the data, but also the analogue and digital processes, means you can create kind of quite small runs or one-off works. So it's kind of the anti-mass consumerism development of artworks, really. So our name Thread's inspired by a coding term within the sort of the processing framework, but it also references the history of textiles as well. So we thought it was a nice kind of way to describe our different processes as the collective. So you'd say, this is the command thread, now go and make this drawing, or go and make this sketch.
And I quite like that we're more than thread, because hopefully we are.
Data bending is basically turning one thing into another thing. So the thing that you start with could be a sound file or an image, and you can turn that into a sound or an image. So I'm going to be using a piece of software called Audacity, which is music production software, and we'll be importing images as a sound file and then exporting them as images again. So I guess, so stage one would be to work with a person and work with a piece of software called Processing, which is kind of an open source free piece of software, and you can create interactive graphics with that. So on the screen you can create coded images, and then we read people's heart rates via a pulse sensor. And then they're interpreted as graphics, so they can directly input into kind of the movements of the artworks on the screen. And as those kind of artworks are moving, we capture those as stills or as moving images, and then they're then printed out and passed on to Sally, who will then interpret them through a more analogue process.
So using the outcomes from Vicky's work with the participants, the images, the digital images are then turned into analog designs, and we use screen printing to create fabric designs and fabric prints and swatches, which are then passed on to Cheryl.
Yeah. And then I will kind of select those images, and based around sort of the original concept, without kind of getting into that I guess too much, I'm putting the whole thing together, and whether that's putting it into repeat, so technically it works and it can be produced on a bigger scale, or there may be elements that have come out from the sort of closer interactions with the participants that kind of then show up later. So it's really about collating all those pieces and putting it together into one final piece that works, and relates back to the original kind of concept or
It's kind of like a remix process, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, there is. It's not quite as linear.
It's not as
it
linear.
moves. There will be a lot of movement between the processes.
And that's very much the practical processes. The concepts are slightly different, because before we start the whole project, we'll have a concept or a metaphor in mind. And actually for this we were very interested in nostalgia, because actually quilting is quite a nostalgic thing. Nostalgia research, psychological research has shown that there's an actual physiological change in the body when we see something we're familiar with or sparks memory. So we were quite interested in kind of how we put all these things together, the processes, the concepts, the ideas, the information, and how we kind of connect everything with the participants. And actually the participants and our relationship with them is really important, and really that's the very beginning. Actually, if we come right back to the beginning, it's how we interact. And you know, we've taken numbers from people this time. I think they're interested in the need to document. That was really the beginning of this, I think, was the very essence of it. So taking historical and futuristic sort of processes and knitting it all together, excuse the pun.
So an analogue process or analogue printing is something that you print by hand. Digital printing is where the printing is done by a computer.
Analogue obviously is a hand process, but it's also about putting soul value back in, and I think we're having a conversation and a question around what is it that gives something soul value and interest and isn't perfect, and so that's another kind of
definitely. I think the process
it can be
because the analogue, i.e. the handmade process, which is, I guess, is a really important part of why I love my practice so much, is that it is really physical and you are connected to the work you make, and every print is different, and it is something that's been made by a human. And you know, you can look at that print and that print and that print and see the complete differences in each of them, and you connect to that. You know, I think
I'd say kind of over the years working with young people, it's kind of equipping them with skills to kind of give them confidence really in their own abilities, and just the idea that they can go out and kind of create their own artworks and put on events, and how do you kind of use this particular equipment or this particular software, and what can I make with that? So it's the artwork is kind of the start of that, I think, but it's more about the wider social skills that you get from that, the building of confidence, the connections to different networks in Manchester. Just the idea that you can be an artist, you can be a technician, you can project things. You know, it's kind of all of those roles that we know in life that you can achieve in those jobs pretty much. So it's kind of the full range of kind of.
I think it's also kind of that acceptance as well of being a creative and having ideas and having the confidence to put those ideas forward, and having a space and a place to do that. And I think that's really important as well, and knowing that that's okay and your ideas are valued, and you will have a voice and you will have a platform, and so I think that's really important as well, definitely.
So the artworks generated at the digital stage will be informed by kind of human data, so we'll be looking at their heart rate. So we'll use code to create kind of digital imagery, and then their heart rate will kind of interface and interact with the digital imagery on screen. And that's an example of generative artwork. So the person will generate a unique image, so each time they'll be different.
And then that kind of idea of creating something unique is then again reflected in the analogue process as well. Again, each print being completely individual and completely different, and that's reflected on the input from the persons, that depending on how much ink they use, how much pressure they use, how they're feeling when they're printing, how their energy is. And
how stressed out they are.
So I think that's really exciting as well. The fact that working with the young people it's participant led. We don't know what the outcomes are going to be, because it's really we want it to be led by them. So during the course of the week they're going to be working in the print studio with me, taking their digital images, learning skills of how to screen print, exploring using different inks, different materials, creating different outputs. But again, that's going to be entirely led by them really. We'll have lots of different options for them to explore, But yeah, we definitely want them to kind of lead in terms
It's going to be
the
really,
output.
really hands-on and quite interactive. So, like, you say, you want them to learn new skills throughout the week, and also kind of discuss their relationship with data and how they can represent themselves through abstracted artworks, really. So we're going to be looking at things to do with data bending and glitch artwork, looking at data projections. We're going to sonify the screen studio. We're going to have loads of microphones all around and get them to kind of record the sound of the printing process as well. And all of that sonic information will go into a soundscape within the exhibition too. So everything that you see in the final exhibition will kind of be infused and informed by the young people. But very much abstracted.
So much less literal.
It's not. Yeah, we don't know what it's gonna be like, which is kind of adds a bit of an element of excitement, I think, as well.